this meeting to order. Councilman Scott, if you'll offer the invocation.
Let's stand, please. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight, Lord, as a group of leaders and citizens and staff of this community. Lord, we ask that you allow us to make the decisions healthy for the environment here, Lord, to serve our land well as we worship you, Lord. We live here for you, Lord. We ask that, Lord, that you'll continue to bless us with health and prosperity, Lord, and those that are ill, be with them in the community and throughout this nation, Lord. We ask for peace, and in your name we all pray. Amen.
Amen. We've got Girl Scout Troop 3424 here, Sarah Gaskins and Claire McGon. Can you come up to the front, please? Girls are going to lead us in an invocation for the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, girls. All right, council, you see the agenda before you. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Any changes? You've seen the known additions, which are printed on here, the Civil War site, Ham and Yam, Friends.
Okay.
All right.
Mayor, business item number 3, we discussed in our work session. I think it's pretty clear. Can we consider putting that on a consent agenda? And also business item number 1, but if they would like to speak about it, we could talk about it, but figure with the staff's approval, we can put that on a consent agenda as well.
All right. So item number 1, you want to put on the consent agenda, and item number 2?
No, 3.
3.
Second.
Okay.
Also, that we would add the additions that we received as requested by the downtown development to the consent agenda.
Before we move item number 1 off the business agenda, are the Girl Scouts here to talk about that? They are here to talk about that.
Okay, that's fine.
Let's leave that on there for
Okay,
them.
no problem.
All right. So just item number 3 then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, we've got one change made to the agenda. Anything else?
Officially approved for the record that consent items 7 and 8 are added.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. All right, we've got those. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as stated. The additions.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to do a presentation starting off, so I'm going to ask the Chief of Police, Michael Scott, to come to the front with me, and Officer Cook. You talking to me?
Can you present that to him?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Police Department recognizes one officer annually as Officer of the Year. This employee is nominated by secret ballot, completed by every member of the Police Department. The officer receiving the most votes is then reviewed by a recognition committee consisting of 4 lieutenants and the patrol commander. The committee then makes a recommendation of Officer of the Year to the police chief, who has the final say on the award. The Officer of the Year for the Smithfield Police Department 2014 is Officer Sean Cook. Officer Cook is a member of Patrol Team A and has been since September of 2012. He's been extremely dedicated to the department and its mission during 2014. Officer Cook often gives freely of his personal time to attend recognition announcements for new hires as well as other officers. He has been very active in community policing events and has been an outstanding representative of the Smithfield Police Department. It is requested he be issued a plaque identifying him as the 2014 Police Officer of the Year. Please congratulate him.
That's a good point. It's been pointed out, if we put the Girl Scouts on the consent agenda, they can come up and speak
Citizens
about it right
comment.
now. And,
Okay.
and that way they won't have to wait till the zoning period, which is gonna be a long time. So can I get a motion to make that change to the agenda schedule?
I'll make a motion that we make
That was
a change.
business item number one.
Place them back on consent.
Place them back on the consent.
Place it back
agenda.
on the consent agenda. Business item number 1 be placed back on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Okay. Does that mean they can come up now? Before the, public sec-
Just bring you the consent agenda up. Okay, you're going to consent. You do that, and bring it to
All right,
Yeah, they're like-
and I can do that right now. All right, we're gonna consider a consent agenda right now. Girls, come on up.
Mayor, Council, this is Sarah Gaskins and Claire Magoo. They're with the Girl Scout troop here in Smithfield, and they want consent, I guess, or approval to do a mural on the underpass of the Greenway under 70. The Parks and Rec Department thinks it's a good idea, and we've talked to Mr. Saviston, and it kind of helped with the graffiti, and we just think it would be an addition to the Greenway.
Can't see it, girls, hold it up. Let's-
I kind of let y'all tell them what you're doing and
Tell us.
how you're doing it and that kind of thing.
The mural is following the Mountain to Sea Trail through North Carolina, and we're doing Cape Hatteras, Topsail Island, Smithfield, Biltmore, and Boone. And it's for our silver project.
Will you do it all in one day? All right, it looks great. All right. Thank you.
So when do you think you will start the project?
Spring break.
That's good, thank you, girls. Okay. We're going to move into the public hearing section. I see a lot of people in the audience, so I assume that's what you're here for. I want to ask anybody in the audience that plans to speak during this public hearing, or even just think you might speak, but you're not sure you will or not, we can swear everybody in at one time. So if you'll stand up, the clerk will swear each person, everybody in at one time.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Mayor, I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Public hearing is now open. Paul Embler, if you'll present the facts.
The first public hearing is case RZ 1501. It's a rezoning of the Nail Howe Estate and a portion of Robertson Welling's property. Let me orient you on the town map where it is. The northern boundary is on Buffalo Road, where the light industrial site was rezoned a few years ago. It goes parallel to US 70 all the way down to the back of Walmart, comes up behind the properties on Buffalo Road, and back all the way behind the properties to the rear of Bookerdary Road, all the way back up to Buffalo Road. It encompasses approximately 238 acres. It is presently zoned either R20A, R8, or light industrial. The proposed rezoning will be B3 and R8 residential. The existing use, the bulk of the property is undeveloped land. The proposed use as of this zoning is unknown. The development, the environmental considerations for the property that on the mapping of the town of Smithfield future land use plan has contained a few acres of wetlands and regulated stream, which is a U.S. Blue Line stream. And the wetlands come from the National Wetland mapping maps. The zoning to the north is R20A and B3, and the existing use is professional office. To the south, it is B3. Existing use is commercial and retail. To the east, the zoning is US Highway 70, which is not zoning, it's just US Highway 70, which is contiguous to the town of Selma's corporate limits. The west, the zoning is R10 and R20A, and that's in the proximity of Booker Dairy Road and their residential subdivisions and undeveloped R20A zone property there. The property considered for rezoning is a large area of undeveloped land adjacent to and west of US Highway 70. The southernmost portion of the property is accessed from Ava Gardner Avenue, while the north side of the property is accessed from Buffalo Road. The bulk of the property will be intersected by the proposed Booker Dairy Road extension, which will provide access to the subject property from the west. As proposed, the westernmost portions of the property are to be zoned for medium-density residential, while the remainder of the property will be zoned for commercial land uses. The strategic growth plan has identified this property as being suitable for low-density residential land uses. However, the Booker Dairy Road extension is identified on the plan, and it is reasonable to assume that upon its construction, the land will be attractive to commercial development. Consistency with the Unified Development Code, the rezoning will be consistent with the UDO, provided that all proposed future uses constructed are to the minimum requirement to meet parking, ADA accessibility, and landscaping. Any other use requiring outdoor storage will require conditional use permits approved by the town council. Compatibility with surrounding land uses. The portion of the property considered for rezoning is north of and adjacent to Smithfield Plaza, and any future commercial development along the proposed Booker Dairy Road extension will be a logical extension of this existing commercial district. The properties fronting on Booker Dairy Road will remain zoned for residential and will serve as a buffer for any future commercial development to the east. The northernmost portion of the property will be better served by B3 zoning district and will be positioned to capitalize on its close proximity to US 70 and the Buffalo Road interchange. The town of Smithfield Fire Department will provide fire protection. The development there, it's listed as school impacts. It will have some impact on schools depending on the density of residential, the development that occur on the R8 properties. Park and recreation should have no major impact. As developed in our subdivision ordinance, there is provisions for park and recreation facilities or fees in lieu of facilities. Access and street will be from Ava Gardner Boulevard, Booker Dairy Road, and Buffalo Road. Water and sewer provider will be the town of Smithfield. They will be town of Smithfield customers all, even though some of them will be potentially served off of Johnston County's water lines. Electrical provider will be a combination of the town of Smithfield and Duke. We have some which will be clearly town of Smithfield, some which will be clearly Duke, and then there's a small area in there that will be an area of choice, either Duke or the town of Smithfield. The findings, in conjunction with the legislative decision for a rezoning request, the town council may consider certain approved criteria. Please refer to attached approved criteria. Planning staff generally accepts these findings as fact as part of the completed application submitted by the petitioner. Those are attached as Exhibit B for your approval criteria. Planning Department recommendation is the Planning Department recommends approval of the request to rezone approximately 238.5 acres of land adjacent to US 70 from the R20A and R8 residential and light industrial districts to B3 and R8 residential zoning districts. The Planning Board recommendation as of February the 5th, 2015, voted unanimously to recommend rezoning. Town Council is now requested to review the proposal and make a decision in accordance with the approved criteria for the rezoning of the 238.5 acres. So with that, I stand open for questions.
First, I need to ask, is the applicant here? Are you in agreement with the testimony offered by Mr. Embler? Or do you have any additional information you'd like to add? Okay, all right. Are there any comments from persons who want to swear to testify right now? Does anybody in the audience want to speak on this issue who's been sworn in, or wants to be sworn in? Now it's time to come up.
I just had a couple of questions, because my subdivision backs up to that new development, and I'm certainly not anti-development on it. You know, it's good property, and I fully anticipate something going in there at some juncture. But my question is related to Bay Hill Drive, and it looks like that, you know, any development, Bay Hill Drive would be a source of, that would be a source of travel. Is there any plans for, you know, connecting that into development? Is it planned to stay as a, you know, as a dead end street? The road really is just for, you know, residential traffic, and if we have to have a lot of concrete trucks, et cetera, the road will probably come apart. So, that's my question. Ron, what will it connect on?
My name is Ron Sutton with Herring Sutton Associates, and I'm here tonight representing Nell Howe State and Alan Wellens. To answer the specific question, first, it's not really a zoning issue question. It's a development plan issue. However, we have looked at that and anticipated that question. And it's our intent to, when a development plan is submitted for the property, to cul-de-sac Bay Hill and we will not be allowed to have access to it by the UDO, as I understand it. But there will be no access to the commercial development through Bay Hill. It'll be cul-de-sac as a termination street so people can turn around. That'll be done at the developer's expense at the time they develop the property, and that's how we plan to handle that. And we do not, in words, we do not have any plans to have any driveway connections to Bay Hill either. It will be a dead-end street terminated by a cul-de-sac.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I have a question for him.
Well, we're going to see if anybody else in the audience, well, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned the cul-de-sac and the property that obviously it butts up right to that community.
Yes, sir.
If you put the cul-de-sac in, what will you do with the property adjacent to that? Will you sell residential lots to complete that, or would you build a buffer, a natural buffer of some sort? Is your plan?
At this point in time, our plan is to cul-de-sac street, not have any driveway connections to it, and not develop any further residential lots there.
Okay, thank you. So is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak on the zoning issue? Once the zoning is done, they will come back and turn in a development plan. That's a separate step. All right. At this time, it's open for the council to ask questions from anybody.
Paul, just for clarification, with this zoning change, would that allow for any townhomes, condominiums, or anything to be built on that?
R8 does allow for multifamily housing, but it is by conditional use permit, so council will get to see any plan for multifamily as it is carried forward. If they were to take the R8 zoning, which basically says that you have to have a minimum of 8,000 square foot lot for a single family residence, that would be an administrative approval and would not come back to council except for the approval of the plan.
Can we address both of these zoning changes as part of one petition and motion? I know we're changing, it looks like 2 tracks to R8 and then 3 separate tracts to B3. Can we do both at the same time?
This would be done as one zoning change from, as delineated in the documents.
So Paul, just one question from a planning standpoint, in your opinion. Looks like we're primarily are doing away with the R10 designation in that particular area and going to R8. From a planning standpoint, do you see any issues as far as that goes for future development in that area?
For single-family residential, there'd be very little impact difference there between R8 and R10. We're talking R10 being 10,000 square foot lots, R8 being 8,000 square foot lots. Pretty much the predominant tract that you see in Wake County and Cary and Apex and those areas are lots that are approximately 8,000 square feet anyway. So those lots can obviously accommodate homes from 1,000 square feet up to 3,000, 3,500 square feet. It's just how the footprint's configured. When you go to multifamily housing, obviously that you're going to have a denser impact on the footprint of the land. But here again, council gets to take a look at that as far as the individual plans because they require conditional use permit for multifamily.
All of the land immediately to the west of the left red line, is that all R8?
We're talking about right here?
It's harder to see. I can see it better on this one. Yes, immediately to the west of that, is that R8?
It's a combination. We have, this part of it right here is already R8. So that is basically right in here. Right here in is R10, which if you're driving up Booker Dairy Road, it's that long stretch of pine trees before the curve starts. That's where that is. It's about a depth of about 550, 600 feet back through the woods till you get to this piece of property here. So that is the only R10. Everything in Eden Woods is R10, and everything in Bradford Park is R10. So what you're going to have is this is going to be R8 here, and you're going to have another piece of R8 up here, which has nothing but R20 zoning around it. And R20 is everything that's in green on this map.
So everything that's fronting Booker Dairy Road will remain residential? Is that?
Yes,
that's part of
this plan here. This tract, this is Booker Dairy Road right here. This tract is proposed to go to R8, and this tract up here is R8. So this is this tract right here is that one there, and this tract right here is this one right here.
I'm just trying to anticipate the future. Can I step down there?
Sure.
If we're looking to rezone this to RA, are these already RA?
These are primarily R28. Right here is this piece right there. So it's surrounded by R28, but this is light industrial right now. So it's actually down zoning to get to B3.
So looking toward the future, that's RA, it's likely that we'll have a request from the developer.
Maybe. The thing is that R8 zoning would be considered a buffer zoning between a commercial and a densely populated rural agricultural zoning district like R28. So usually you would see in a transition from commercial to low density residential either R8 or R10 or O and I.
Any other questions from the council for Paul? Or the representative of the developer?
And one thing I want to mention to you, as far as your considerations and deliberations tonight, The question came up about the roadways. Technically, the zoning has to stand on its own, the rezoning has to stand on its own merit and not the potential of future development. But there is one thing that I can add to it, that the roadway that is going to be built, the Booker Dairy Road extension, which will go from the credit union all the way over to Ava Gardner Boulevard on 301, will have one access point between News Charter School and 301. So, and then we do not, by our zoning ordinance, as Mr. Sutton indicated, allow any commercial property to be accessed to a residential property. That's not allowed in the code. So I wanted to emphasize that, but that shouldn't be a consideration in your deliberations at this point.
Yeah, and it should not be, I agree, but with that being said, Paul, do you know what the latest is on the plans for that road?
The money, I called DOT today in anticipation of that question being asked. The money has been appropriated, and it will be, as close as I could get them to commit to, it will be under construction within a 5-year period. I know that they have already met with some of the property owners, so that means acquisition is coming forward. Normally, it takes a year to 2 years to accomplish all the acquisition, so my guess is the earliest you're going to see any construction is about 3 years out.
The actual plan for the road, do you have any idea when?
I've been told the plans are 90% complete.
I mean, I strongly encourage this board, and we have some developers here, I think, to, again, it has nothing to do with the rezoning of this property, but I think we need to reach out to some of these property owners and talk to them, especially some of the developers, and, you know, as far as access points on this road, and just have some, at least have some discussions about it, because, you know, we had a major road put in, and it's very limited access, and sort of hinders development, in my opinion, but I think we need to have some discussions about it.
Any other questions for Paul?
Mr. Embler, the map where the end of Bay Hill Drive is and the property is going to, in question to be rezoned, generally, from your experience, what do you see is adequate when you have a residential and a commercial zoning area? Is there generally a buffer or some type of, I mean, how does that usually addressed? Because obviously this is a transition for those people that live there, and that's a lot of their concern.
As the property is developed in our uniform development ordinance, we have a buffer requirement that's established. And I believe where you have commercial up against residential, it's like a 40-foot buffer. I'd have to look that up and get back with you, which is required to be landscaped. So there would be a buffer at the property line, no matter how the road was terminated, they would still have to have a buffer.
Anything else for Paul? Thank you, Paul. I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. At this time, is there any more discussion by the council or any questions to staff about this issue? All right, well, we've got findings of facts, and we've got 8 of them. I can go through all 8 individually, or if the council thinks they're going to approve it, we can just do them all at one time as one.
Mayor, I would move that we, with regard to findings of fact 1 through 8, that we approve those with agreeing with each of the findings of fact
All right,
as set forth in the agenda.
I need a second for Mr. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So the motion carries.
Mayor, I would also move that we approve the request for the rezoning as set forth, page 19 of our agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Thank you, and welcome to Smithfield. All right, we've got a second public hearing, and this one's about the car lot on 210. I need a motion to open this public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Mr. Embler, if you'll present the information on the car lot.
Let me reference you to where this is, because it's in our ETJ. This is US 70 West, this is the Neuse River, this is 210 where it exits, this is the split between 1010 and 210, and this is Swift Creek Road where it intersects 210, and this is the location that we're talking about. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to operate an automotive sales lot designed to accommodate that your write-up says 20 cars, it should read 30, for the sale and located on the property located within the B3 zoning district. It is a 3.228 acre parcel, currently zoned B3, and the land is vacant and undeveloped. The proposed use is an automobile sales lot. There does not appear to be any environmentally sensitive areas on the property considered for the conditional use permit to include floodplains or other designated wetlands. The proposed facility will be required to comply with the Town of Smithfield stormwater regulations to include detention and nitrogen offset payments. The zoning is R20A to the north. The existing use is residential. To the south, it is R20A. The existing use is residential agriculture. To the east, it is B2 business. It is existing use is residential. And to the west, it is R20A and residential agricultural. Staff analysis, the proposed automobile sales lot is permitted use within the B3 zoning district with a conditional use permit. The applicant has provided a sketch plan to the 3.228 acres showing improvements to the property to include a paved parking lot for 30 automobiles and 5 required parking spaces. A 30-foot wide driveway is proposed, allowing access to NC Highway 210. Landscaping will be provided in accordance with the UDO and will include a 40-foot landscape buffer and no privacy fencing. There will be privacy fencing along the western property line as a recommendation from the planning board. A location for a modularly constructed building is shown on the plan. No building elevations have been provided by the applicant at this time. A lighting plan will be required showing the lamp fixture locations and required full cutoff fixture design. The required lighting plan must also show that no more than 2-foot candles of light will be leaving the property at any given time. All areas of storage of automobiles that can accommodate more than 5 vehicles must be paved in accordance with the minimum development standards of the UDO, and that they have shown that on their plans. A variance to the parking requirement must be requested and granted by the Town of Smithfield Board of Adjustment prior to staff approving if they had requested a gravel lot. Staff recommends that the street yard landscaping be planted adjacent to the parking area and that vehicle screening be installed around all areas containing vehicular surface areas. On February the 15th, the applicant submitted a revised site plan that is labeled all improvement surfaces as being paved. The proposed automobile sales lot is consistent with the strategic growth plan. The proposed automobile sales lot is inconsistent with the recommendations of the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, which calls for low-density residential development uses near the intersection of NC Highway 210 and Swift Creek Road. An automobile sales lot is permitted use within the B3 zoning district with a valid conditional use permit. The applicant will be responsible for submitting a preliminary site plan which shows all applicable minimum development standards and will be met prior to the site plan approval and issuance of a valid zoning permit, including paved parking and vehicular storage. Compatibility with surrounding land uses. An automobile sales lot at this location would pose a compatibility issue with surrounding land uses, given that it is a rural setting and adjacent to established residential homes. Signs will be permitted in accordance with the UDO, which will allow for a maximum height of 6 feet and 75 square feet in sign area. The fire protection district is the town of Smithfield, should not have any effect on schools or parks and recreation. Access will be to NC Highway 210. All accesses will be controlled by NCDOT. Water and sewer provider, it will actually be on site with septic. The electrical provider will be Duke Progress. The planning department recommends approval for the proposed automobile sales lot, providing that all parking spaces are paved and landscaped. Landscaping is installed in accordance with the minimum development standards, and that vehicular surface screening is installed adjacent to all vehicular surface areas. The planning board at its February the 15th meeting unanimously voted to recommend approval of the conditional use permit, providing that an 8-foot white vinyl fence is installed on the west side to reduce buffer yard. Street trees nearest the intersection are set back an additional 10 feet. Vehicular service area is moved towards the public's right-of-way. All VSA be screened with continuous rows of planted shrubs, 5 foot on center. And VSA stands for vehicle surface area, in other words, everything paved. All other minimum requirements of the UDO are met to include paving of all areas to be used for automobiles. The town council was requested to review the petition for the conditional use permit for automobile sales lot and for this property and take action based on the finding of fact. And with that, that's the end of the staff presentation.
Is the applicant here for the car lot? Is this all, are you in agreement with staff's?
Yes, let me just say that we comply with every condition placed upon us by the planning board and the revised plan for the city and
Are there any comments from people in the audience who have come to speak on this matter? This is the time for citizens' comment. Sir, if you'll stand up and come up to the front. Were you sworn in on the person? All right. You'll state your name and.
I'm Mike Caparelli on the property right to the left of it, where the fence would be going. I'd just like to say I've been building this house for 3 years and moved down from New York. It just seems so weird to put a used car lot dealership right next door when you got 5 within 2 miles from here. Would help be the 5th one. And now I know what it's going to do. The value of my house is going to plummet right down. So that's where my concerns come in. And that's all I got to say about it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Are there any other comments from the audience or people who want to speak to this issue?
My name is Esther Watson. I live at 2267 NC Highway 210. We've lived there since 2007, built our house there. The intersection of Highway 210 and Swift Creek should not be a business destination. That intersection is a very busy intersection. There are a lot of agricultural vehicles that travel that road, school buses. There's major school bus stops. When the bridge opens, the 45-mile-per-hour traffic signs are ignored. And so when people come upon this car lot, we're going to have a mess at that intersection. We already have problems at that intersection. We live in the county. This decision is being made by the town of Smithfield. We don't have the ability to impact who sits on this council, but you have the ability to impact our quality of life. And because of that, we ask you to deny this request so that we can maintain the quality of life that we have for the people who live in the residential areas at the intersection of Highway 210 and Swift Creek. Thank you.
My name is Franklin Watson. I live at 2267 NC Highway 210. This is my wife. When I first heard that there was a car lot proposed for that area, I thought the best thing that I could do was to ride around Smithfield and see what existing parking lots look like. It didn't take me long to get to West Market Street, just west of the Neuse River. And that's when it hit me. That's what is being proposed to go directly across the street from my house. That's what we'll look at every morning when we open the blinds, when we go to the mailbox, when I'm riding around in the back on my tractor, working in the garden. I'm going to see what you see on the west side of the Neuse River. I can't see how a car lot is a good fit for that area. It's right in the middle of 4 single-family homes. I respectfully ask this board to deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on this matter? All right. At this time, Mr. Embler will take questions from the council. The city council wants to ask questions. Has anybody got any questions for Paul?
Yeah, Mr. Embler, can you address what efforts the planning department did in terms of the impact this car lot would have on the adjoining property owners?
The original plan that was submitted showed the actual parking lot area being unpaved. We requested that it be paved. They complied with that after the plan, as part of the planning board's request. We asked for additional setback off of 210 in order to provide additional landscaping, and also worked in providing a buffer, larger buffer on the residential property to the left of the car lot. And that, after it went through the planning board, the recommendation came forth that it would actually be a white vinyl fence similar to the one that was put up behind the Family Dollar on 301. And the UDO does have those capabilities to kind of mitigate buffers and to add additional landscaping for the site development part of it. I might remind council that you have the, by virtue of it being a conditional use permit, can add additional criteria other than that. But between staff and the planning board, that's the recommendations that were made. I think you have them all listed there on the second page of your presentation.
Mr. Emler, could you review with the council the current zoning around that property?
This is the property right here. It is B3. On the other side of the intersection, which would be the northeast quadrant, there's a remnant of what is in our zoning is called B2. It was commercially zoned when it was in the county before it came into the ETJ, so that zoning carried forward. Everything that you see in green here is residential 20 agricultural, which is low density development. Basically, they're acre square lots minimum. In this brown area that you have there, that is Bell Hope Mobile Home Park.
How long has it been zoned for business, this piece of property?
The council rezoned it approximately 2 years ago.
Mr. Emmer, was there any consideration or consultation with DOT in reference to traffic control with the effects of this proposed automobile lot?
Mr. Simmons can address that. He has had conversations with DOT. They control the driveway access permit on 210 as well as Swift Creek. We do not control that. So I would defer to Mr. Simmons on that.
Okay. Can you speak on that?
My name is Dan Simmons. I'm with Triangle Civil Works at 211 Tyler Drive here in Smithfield, and representing Mr. Philip Tyler, the owner of the property. 2 years ago, when this was rezoned, we were looking at your future land use plan, which called for a commercial node at the intersection of 1010 and 210. If you've ever been out there, that's not suitable for a commercial node, because 2 quadrants of that is laying in wetlands. The other one is sitting high above the roadway. So the idea for the rezoning and the thought of the council at that time, it didn't make sense to move that commercial node up to this intersection, which is very skewed and very dangerous, and DOT has recently put a stoplight there. It really made more sense to put it right here at this node. The planning board and we had originally set this car lot back 50 feet off the right of way. The thoughts were, and brought up at the planning board, if you do that, whoever operates this lot is going to put the cars between the paved area and the roadway, so that there where the landscaping's at. So we were asked to move it closer to the road, which would be closer to the gentleman's house across the road by the planning board and the planning staff, and that's what we did. But we, in addition, we added the landscaping around the front. In discussions with DOT, they were just asking us to get the driveway as far away as practical from that intersection, moving further south down 210, or rather west down 210, southwest. I'll be glad to answer any other questions you might have. Mr. Simmons, do you think that the location of a car lot there is going to negatively impact the property values of the residences nearby?
I think it would less impact the property values of some of the things that can go in a B3 without coming back here for a conditional use permit. There are things allowed in the code that can go in there that's of a higher intense use. You don't find late at night uses in a car lot. You know, and as part of this conditional use permit, y'all can put hours of operation restrictions on it. And if you choose to, that, you know, it's whatever y'all desire to. But I see it generating less traffic than some of the other uses that could go in a B3 zoning.
So Dan, just for clarification, with the plan that we have in front of us, because I know there was a misprint, I guess, in the package, as Mr. Imler stated, about 20 cars versus 30 cars. Is this plan that's in our package, is it drawn for 30 cars?
It is drawn for 30.
And in the area that's stipulated there, I'm not sure how are you going to restrict? I'm not sure what that is, if that's plantings there. That, I guess, goes around the building, but it's sort of an out, I'm not sure if that's a fence, or are you looking at the?
You mind if I step over there?
Sure, no, come right ahead, because I'm just trying to envision. Yes, okay, yeah, definitely. So this.
That is the shrubbery that was
is
requested, that 5 feet apart. At the time it goes in, it will be between 24 and 36 inches high. And this would have a 8-foot high vinyl fence, such as what you have.
Vinyl fence is on the side too, side, Mr. Caporal?
Yes, sir. The vinyl fence goes right there.
Is there a vinyl fence on the back?
We were not requested by the planning board to put it there.
That appears to be a bigger or more intensely landscaped buffer in the back than the side.
And part of what the planning board asked us to do when we said put the vinyl fence in, we'll allow you to reduce the landscaping by 50%. And that's what we did, because it's all sitting behind an 8-foot high vinyl fence. So you basically only see it from this side.
What was you may have addressed this, if you did, I apologize, but why have a driveway cut on 210 as opposed to Swift Creek Road?
The driveway cut, the property is facing 210. So, you know, the view of the parcel and the view of the product is going to be on 210. Makes sense that the guys coming up the drive and turn in.
Yeah,
So,
oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah.
not, that's irrelevant when you say that.
But with it facing 210, if I had to put a driveway and DOT wants me to get away from here, I'd be sitting way back behind this thing, which is really, from an operational standpoint and being able to operation of the car lot, it wouldn't make sense to put it back.
So, Dan, let me ask you a question. You said you originally had it set back, what, 50 feet?
Yes,
And
we originally set this thing
what
back.
was your reason, from a planning standpoint and a design standpoint, what was your reasoning there?
For setting it back 50 feet.
Just-
The UDO, if we were set it back 50 feet, allowed us not to have this hedge all the way around this thing.
Okay.
And it was a visibility thing from traffic coming down. Well, I mean, I tell you, I agree when you drive out West Market Street. But this ain't what that is. Well, I know, but my fear is, would it become that? Well, if your zoning enforcement people do their job, it won't become that. I'll leave that with y'all. I don't.
All right,
Mr. Simmons, is this applicant who's proposing to put the car lot there currently running any other car lots?
No, he has, my understanding is that he has a gentleman interested in leasing that property that has run car.
So we don't know who the
I do not know who he is.
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Watson, if I may. I'm just curious how long you've been a resident there. You may have told us, and I didn't hear you. How long have you lived at the property there?
We've lived there since, '07.
And you served the last 3 years? Right.
Yeah, that was my next question. Were y'all aware when you purchased there and moved there that it was, that corner lot was actually? And do you understand that what Mr. Simmons and Mr. Emler stated, that it could be some other type of business that proposes later? Because,
I understand that, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
yes, sir.
You would never allow somebody to take a vacant lot on Franklin Boulevard and ask for it to be zoned residential in the middle of all of those businesses. It would be dead on arrival. It never dawned on us that you would zone it commercial in the middle of all of that residential. So by the time we realized what was happening, it was done. We couldn't.
I don't know what it is, when it's built there, put a leave tractor trailer parked down that road. People stop and make left and that dealership.
Yeah, I've been through there, and I actually, in fact, know the residents you're talking about. Very nice. Unfortunately, the stuff behind you guys is not as nice as yours, but we understand your concern. But the major thing is telling the property owner they can't put it based on the zoning. And we appreciate y'all bringing your objective data to the council.
You're saying about the entranceway coming in the road on the other side, would have all the, once that bridge opens up, everybody's coming back down that road, you won't have a chance of having all that accident there. And to a degree, the place should be set back, because they got 3.5 acres there, it should be set back off the road, but being a big ice storm into the road. There's no way to have it back 50 or 75 feet. And entranceway on the other road, so you won't have all that traffic stopping right there. Right now, it's a nightmare with the distance in the road, so once it opens up, the building's not going back down there again.
So based on what I hear you saying, would you be okay with it if it was put back to the 50 foot as initially proposed, if it gets approved?
Now it's commercial already, I wasn't here, but it seems like it's gonna happen anyway, but yeah, I would like to see it go back further, so you know, eyesore into the road, and have enough bushes, and make it look really nice in front of the dealership, and like the rest of the dealerships in town. It looks like a nice commercial business, and the road being on the streets, so interrupt all that traffic. Kill right there, might have to kill it, so I have like 5 or 6. His driveway is, my driveway is probably about 50 feet apart.
So if I heard you correctly, you're saying if it was on Swift Creek Road?
Yes, I mean, for that side. You can have a sign right there, still know what the dealership is.
Still wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but you would be more apt
Yeah.
to understand or even adapt to it.
There.
Thank you. Do you need anything, Elizabeth? Did you have anything else to answer?
Any other questions from the council, to Mr. Embler, or the engineer, or the people who live beside him?
Mr. Emily, could you address the concern that you hear them present?
Yes. Mr. Simmons stated about the 50-foot setback. What wasn't said was that the landscape requirement is reduced by 50% if you go 50 feet or more. So if you do opt to go back to 50 feet or more from the right-of-way of 210 and the approval of this, and you want to maintain a vegetative landscape buffer that's hefty, that was one reason why staff requested it be moved closer to the road, because if it's less than 50 feet, the landscape requirement doubles.
But on a conditional use, we can,
What's that?
with a conditional use, we can impose that condition.
That's correct. That's why I wanted you to understand that you could do that. And then also the problem that we have a lot with on car lots, if we have extensive setbacks from the edge of the right-of-way to where the paved area is, inevitably we got cars displayed in that no man's land that's supposed to be a landscape buffer, and it's just it's a code enforcement nightmare. It's a weekly thing.
I have a concern with what bothers me. We don't know who's going to be there. I mean, you just said that yourself. He's just going to lease it to a business owner that wants to put a lot there, and you yourself have already degraded West Market Street. What if it's the same owner? I'm not.
When he moves in there,
Okay.
and if the zoning enforcement officer does his job.
Well, you worry about developing, let them worry about zoning. Answer the question. Just answer the question.
We're repeating again, sir, I'm sorry.
I said, how do we know that it's not going to be the same owners on West Market Street?
You don't.
Okay,
You
that was the
absolutely
question.
don't.
That's all I need to hear. I mean, I do not continue to degrade the zoning department.
Even if you did know who it was, he could default on his lease and somebody else could go in and.
Okay, that's fine.
So, Paul, as far as, or this may be an appropriate question for Dan, as far as lighting, what type of, my concern is from the neighbor standpoint, usually car lots, and I know we have restrictions on the brightness and so forth, but it's been my experience that car lots generally like to have their lots lit up at night. And can you speak to the lighting of this and how that may impact the property owners?
Let me state by some of the newer lighting projects that were not done with site plan approval. The lights were put in and we found out about it after the fact. Some of them we were able to get changed to the proper type fixtures, but we require what is known as a full cutoff fixture, which means the globe cannot extend down below the bottom of the light. It has to be recessed up in it. Therefore, the spread of the light doesn't go out very far from the base of the lamp. It's a lot easier to control where the light is, and we have a standard now that you cannot exceed 2-foot candle at the property line, which give you a rough idea where 2-foot candles at. Most residential street lighting is at 2-foot candles. So it's not a real bright lighting. What you see on some of the larger dealership lots, you're looking at probably 30, 40-foot candles. So they're on up there pretty high. But some of those larger dealerships, if they come in today to get those permitted, they wouldn't have been able to get those type light fixtures permitted. If you look at Deacon Jones's lot that backs up to the Lampe property in the railroad, it's on the CVS side of the road. That new lot has full cutoff fixtures in it. You can't see the light, the lamp, excuse me.
Any other questions?
Paul, can you tell us, and I didn't bring my zoning or ordinance book with me, Do you know right off the top of your head, what are some of the permitted uses in a B3?
It's,
I've got them here if you need it.
it's an extensive list. If you'd like, I will go through it. But
Well,
it basically, any commercial business is allowed in there by right. In other words, then there are another list of specialty type businesses that can be in there by conditional use. Those generally have maybe gas tanks, they require pumping of gas, or they got some kind of storage there that would require a conditional use permit. But highway business, anything that you can think of that would locate on a highway can be located in a B3 zoning district. That's what US 301 and US 70 are in Smithfield is B3.
So we could probably have a convenience store there.
You
As
could.
long as it didn't have gas.
Yes, you could.
And I believe.
Because there used to be a convenience store, Old Barber Store was across the Swift Creek Road, I think it was Barber Store. Well, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
I
where
used to
the
stop and
county,
get me a Coke there when I was working in the back. That's a long time ago.
that's why when the county zoning was rolled over into the town zoning, it shows this commercial on the other side of the intersection.
Any other questions for Paul? I'm going to look for a motion to close the public hearing. I got a motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Let's go for the finding of fact. It's on page 65 of your agenda, and we've got 4 items. I'm going to go through them one by one on this one. We need to approve all 4. If any one of them is denied, the motion, this full motion will not carry. The first one, I'm just going to read the part A. We will approve it based on the evidence and testimony presented to the finding of town council. If approved, it will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where it's proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted. I'm not going to read the whole thing because you guys have it. Or you can deny it on the assumption that it will materially endanger the public health. Do I have a motion on, or a vote to approve or deny based on the materially endangering or not materially endangering?
Well, if I can ask a question, is there any evidence before us, because we're sitting, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and it's based on the evidence. Do we have any evidence in either direction regarding traffic flow, traffic studies, or anything like that? And I think we can probably say the same thing with all the findings of fact. I know we've heard a lot of testimony, if you will, but do we really have any evidence as to traffic patterns or traffic flow, turn lanes, or anything like that? And Bob, that may be a question for you, I don't know.
I'd like the board to look at it, but probably one of us, if you wanted to approve it or deny it, probably the biggest issue may be finding on whether or not it injures the value of adjoining property owners.
Can you repeat that, Bob?
Will or will not the property substantially injure the value of adjoining and budding property owners? Certainly.
Which is item number 3 of our 4 to approve.
Right, page 67.
But we're going to work our way through 1, 2, 3, and 6.
Was it possible to table this matter for tonight, and with the direction that the parties bring back some evidence next month?
Yes. Especially if you designate it to a specific meeting.
I mean, I find these things really difficult because we're balancing the rights and obligations of adjoining property owners. And we're also, like was pointed out, this is probably not even in town of Smithfield. And it's one thing for us to think it will affect adjoining property. It's another thing to have competent evidence of that fact. For all we know, that if this car lot was going to have 200 customers a day, that would impact tremendously traffic patterns and traffic and public safety. But that, we don't know. We can guess, we can apply our common sense, which is okay, but, I mean, with these matters, I would just, quite frankly, I'd like more information.
Mr. Ash, I think, I think it's a fair request. I would say, procedurally, I think the way you look at it is, one, the same evidentiary standards that apply in a court of law do not apply here. It's more general, and you can use testimony. I would say on this issue, you have heard testimony from the people who have lived there for the longest amount of time about a traffic concern. And I think that would shift the burden back to the applicant to show that it's not a concern, if you take their evidence at face value and you deem that appropriate, which you don't have to. People can disagree on that. But just as a procedural matter, there is some evidence in the record that traffic is a concern by the persons who testified.
Do we,
So, question, so can we request, just for clarification, request the facts submitted from DOT in reference to the traffic control count?
I'm not sure on
Or
this.
traffic count?
Sure.
As a proof of,
You can continue the hearing and request the planning department to obtain any kind of information or expertise you desire. You might have some expense to it to get them here, but you can do it. You need somebody to testify. And Paul may or may not be able to testify based on his talks with those experts. Right? He feels that he can testify and he has competence to testify. You may agree with him and he can then testify. But, he's got to have some real background in that particular issue. I don't know how much background he's got in traffic.
Yeah, obviously, we have an expert who comes in. That's one thing. Y'all have heard those before, I think, in other hearings. But again, I think the first question is, whose burden is this? And once the issue's been raised of unequal value, traffic, and other things, the burden, and this is, I'm certain of this, shifts back to the applicant to show those or to overcome them. If you don't buy the testimony and don't think they've really raised the issue of traffic, then I think the issue has not been raised. The presumption doesn't shift back to the applicant to come up with, additional evidence of that. And I think that's entirely up to you guys to make that decision in terms of, do you find like the issue's been raised?
Okay.
Well, what I'd like to do is go through each of the 4 standards, and if we say, I'd like to have more information on this one, I request they come back at a later date. Let's pick through the stuff and make sure we're asking every question we want to ask at one time. So on this first one about not materially endangering or materially endangering, Councilman Emery's uncomfortable and would like to have a traffic study of some type done. Is the council in agreement on that? Motion to delay?
I'm not so sure it's a traffic study, but I would like to know the impact. I'd also like to know, I've heard from Mr. Simmons, whom I have the utmost respect for, and what the owner wants. But for all practical purposes, we've got a commercial entrance on 1501 going into Bell Hub. What's it going to hurt to have another commercial entrance off Swift Creek Road? I mean, that's questions I don't know. I'm raising that as a question.
All right, well, if you could give me some kind of motion for your question, we can, do we need a motion to vote on that, to ask for that on each of these items? Or just make a list of motions?
I think you're ultimately going to have I think that it may be a good exercise so that people know what you're looking for, but you're ultimately going to continue and reopen the hearing for anything they want to bring up. Now, you might be able to help them as to what you're really interested in.
I want to do the best thing, the best job we can do for all the property owners. Bearing in mind that whatever we do, we're going to upset one property owner or another, but I want to make sure that the process we go through and the information we get and the decision we make based on full information is on solid ground.
I think every council person should speak their hearts on this, but I want to clarify so our staff will know what to do when we meet. They can answer your questions with satisfaction.
I would like more information on the traffic impact, potential traffic impact, and how that would vary from a 210 driveway cut versus a Swift Creek Road driveway cut.
All right. Okay, we're not going to vote because there's nothing really to vote on, but that's on the first one. Let's go to item number 2 of the 4. Based on evidence and testimony presented to the Fine Town Council, if approved, meets all the required zoning specifications and confirmation standards and practice of sound land use. Does any council member have any questions about that along those lines? All right. Any discussion on that? All right. Item number 3, which I think is going to be the stickler, if we approve it, you're saying it will, based on the evidence and testimony presented to the fine town council, if approved, will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting properties, or will not be detrimental to the use of development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. You can approve based on it will not injure those people, or you can deny it based on injuring those people.
Request more information.
More information, all right.
We need to know who the owner's gonna lease it to, and then we can look at if they're on the previous owners. I mean, if they're an owner of a car lot, how it looks. Are they having zone, or having code violations already?
But one of the issues with zoning is, once we do it, that guy can disappear the next week and move another car lot.
I get that.
Yeah.
And the conditional use
it might be we need to
permit
look at
runs
rezoning
with the
it
land.
anyway.
So my concern here is, and I certainly understand the planning board's actions, but quite frankly, I've seen where we've required bushes to be planted, and car dealers have actually parked their cars on top of bushes. So to state that simply making this developer put in the vegetation is going to prevent that is simply not true. In fact, granted, it may help, but I think if we do anything, we need to put some kind of restriction on, specifically on the number of cars, whether that's 30 or less, I don't know, but it's something that I need additional information on. And also, it'd be my recommendation that if we go with the vegetative buffer, that we also put a requirement in from a setback as far as being able to park vehicles there, because especially if this driveway is going to be on 210, in my opinion, it is a very busy highway, and trying to get in and out of there may be difficult, I don't know, but I do know it will be difficult if there is a car parked right up by the road. You will not be able to see. We face that right now with some of our existing dealerships. So I understand what the neighbors say, and I totally agree with some of the car lots. So what this board can do is it at least put restrictions on it that are reasonable and can be enforced if need be. One of our problems with some of the existing ones is that they were permitted many, many years ago, and we don't have any ordinances or special uses in place that we can deal with them, actually. But this board tonight, or whether it's at the continued meeting, we can definitely put restrictions on that are reasonable, and I think would help out the surrounding property owners. So that's one of my recommendations, but I guess you don't have to.
When they come back to us.
When it comes back,
all
yes,
right.
sir.
All right, well, let's everyone read over finding of number 4. That's the last one. And if you've got any comments to make about that, we can tell planning also. And that way, when they come back to us, we'll cover all 4 of them. Based on the evidence and testimony, the finding of the town council applicant, if approved, would not adversely affect the adopted plan and policy of the town of Smithfield. Basically, are they within compliance with the zoning?
Gentlemen, some may say that we've merely punted, but, we get these agendas about a week before these meetings, and I take these things very seriously, and I would rather delay a decision than make a rush decision that may not be the right one. And that may not be acceptable to some of you, but I think.
No, I think it's the right thing.
I want to be as informed as we can and make the best decisions we can. I know planning and the planning board, planning staff, planning board, they've worked hard on it.
Paul, have you got all our concerns?
I've got the ones you mentioned written down.
So I just have one other question, and if it's reasonable and it makes sense from a planning standpoint, to look at, does it make sense to move this back as the developer originally requested, 50 feet. You know, I don't know that answer, but it's been raised tonight. The property owner stated that that would assist with them. I certainly understand the planning board's decision on that, and I respect that decision, but I don't know. I would like some more additional information on that as well.
Paul, when do you want to bring that back to us, at which meeting? At next month's meeting, or you need more time?
If we don't close the hearing, we don't have to re-advertise, so I know that next month's meeting will be fine. Some of these things may take a little bit of time to get some information, particularly if we have to bring someone in from outside to address traffic. So I don't know that we can get it to your work session in time for you to discuss it at your work session.
Why don't we put it on the agenda for the work session, and whatever information we have, we can discuss, and then we'll sort of.
I think we need to put on the agenda for the regular city council meeting next month.
We have to notify the property owner, so they'll know.
Right. Let's plan on, let's shoot for next regular scheduled council.
And they'll be open to evidence, and the property owners and applicants
That's,
need to
that's,
know
we
that. That's the purpose of it.
we would go back through the whole process, hopefully abbreviated version, but, so I'm gonna close the public hearing, and we'll go through the whole process again.
No, we don't want to close it, we just want to continue it.
No.
You wanna continue it then?
I move we continue the public hearing until the April meeting.
And I'd like to make sure that all the property owners are told beforehand also.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, we're gonna move off of that one then. And at this time, we're through with the zoning. Paul will send you guys a letter, we'll pick you up next month to get more facts. Thank you for coming in. At this time, we let the citizens make comments if anyone's come in for that. So if there's any citizen who wants to make a comment to the council, we open up the council for a short time for that. Is there anybody here who'd like to speak to the council? You'll state your name and address. All right, no citizens. All right, I got a consent agenda. We've added some items, and I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, business items. Number 1 was removed to the consent agenda, Girl Scouts, so we're going to move to number 2, consideration and approval for a lease agreement with ProSource, some new fitness equipment for Smithfield Recreation and Aquatic Center.
In this year's fiscal year budget, the Aquatic Center was appropriated $35,000 to replace existing fitness equipment at the Aquatic Center. The existing equipment was purchased when the building was opened in 2009 and is going on 6 years old and has exceeded its actual life expectancy. Those that have gone in there and worked out see that they go down occasionally. With that money appropriated, we looked at 2 different options. We looked at purchasing equipment to try to replace it over the next 3 years, and by purchasing it, we could do 5 to 6 pieces a year at $35,000 a year, and some of the equipment would be 8, 9, close to 10 years old by the time we got it all replaced, or entering a lease to buy the or to purchase the equipment from ProSource with a $1 buyout at the end of the lease in 3 years. We would replace 10 treadmills, 5 ellipticals, and we would add a stair climber, which we don't have, and that lease would run $35,911 per year for 3 years, and then you'd have a $1 buyout at the end of the lease for each piece of equipment. $1. And it was our recommendation that we replace the equipment with a lease. It would require a 3-year agreement by the town right at $36,000 a year for the next 3 years. The additional funds would be absorbed by our operational budget this year, and then we would put it in the next 2 years' budget.
I'm looking at this, is that for a total of $32,870.20?
That is for the purchase. The lease proposal did not get in there. The 32,000 is for 5 pieces, the lease.
They all have it.
Yes.
At the top of your, sheet, you'll see that the bids for fitness equipment purchase is 32,000 and the bids for fitness, lease there is 98,000 over 3 years, and that would be divided by into 3 years.
That was in the addition.
Yes, that was in the addendum.
Yeah.
Reading this right? 5 treadmills?
That would be for the purchase. We got the purchase route, which would be 5 treadmills this year, and that would be 32,000 or roughly $33,000. But if you did the lease, we would get 15 pieces of equipment up front and pay for it over 3 years through a lease.
You're anticipating having to replace.
All the equipment needs to be replaced,
So in the
and
next
it needs
3
to
years,
be
you're gonna have
replaced.
to replace 15 pieces of equipment
Regardless,
is what you're
right.
saying. So it's basically a net
Right.
of what we're gonna spend already. Basically, it's a net what you're gonna spend over the next 3 years, not including inflation.
Correct.
And also, that will come, if I read correctly, it will not require us to do any maintenance.
We won't have a maintenance agreement. Right now, we have a maintenance agreement where they come in at $23.10 a year to maintain the equipment, look at the belts, lube, all that. The equipment has a lifetime warranty on the frame. The treadmills are 5-year on the motor, 3-year on the parts, and 1 year on the labor, so we wouldn't have to do that. Now, we may, it's basically $400 a visit for them to come in. We may have them come in once a year, for the first 3 years, just, to do some general maintenance to make sure if we think that we're going to keep the equipment longer than 3 years instead of replace it at the end of the lease.
And currently, we spend $2,300 on a maintenance contract.
On a maintenance agreement.
And you're saying reducing that to $400 a year. Basically, once a year, you're gonna have those guys come in.
For the first year, we may, it may be twice the second year, but that would be in our
Right,
operational
right.
budget, depending on what the use and how much we see that it was needed. But we wouldn't have a contract in which it was required.
Right.
So how would that work, and I apologize if you say this, how would that work though? If during the lease period, we do have,
We would call them, if we had an issue, we would call them in and they would repair it. After the first year, we would have to pay for the labor, but for the 3 years of the lease, all the parts would be, and everything would be covered by the warranty.
Mr. Johnson, how come we only have 2 different companies? How did you seek this information?
There was basically 3 companies that provide commercial-grade equipment in our area, that could come in and install the equipment, and 3 companies were bid on, or sent bids, but only 2 of them sent proposals back.
Having just received this tonight, I'd love to have a chance to look over this a little more thoroughly. Can we table this to our budget session? We'll talk with you about that. I make a motion.
so just, if you don't mind, and I certainly understand, but I will say, because I do go there, I've had many complaints from people there about the equipment. And we are going to lose members. One specifically has come up to me and said that if we don't do something with the equipment, again, that's no reason to rush, but it is a concern to the members and so forth that if we do not do something with our equipment, they're going to go elsewhere. So
And it is a determining factor on memberships, new memberships and membership retention.
So if there's something,
the biggest complaint we
maybe
get.
we could spend a little time going through this if you're not comfortable with it, Councilman Scott, and then if you're still not, then fine, we certainly can, but if there's something that we can work through tonight, it may take a little longer, but if you had specific questions and so forth, I would.
Well, I don't understand $108,000 versus the 98. What's the differences in?
It's not 108,000, it's 90.
Well, this page right here, it's not numbered, as the total is $108,720 total for the lease with Carolina Sports.
That was the least bid for Carolina Sport and Fitness. We'll be going with ProSource, which is on the previous page, which is, 98,377.
Over 3 years.
What's the difference in the, I mean, obviously we just received this, what's the difference? I mean, what's the difference in 98 versus 108?
The 98, they're basically two different, one is a Precor treadmill and one is a true treadmill. It's the make and model of the treadmill. They're basically apples and apples. The true treadmills and ellipticals that ProSource is providing came in cheaper than the bid from Carolina Sport and Fitness, who does Precor.
So I know nothing about the brands and so forth. All I know is running on them, and I need to be on it more. But from your professional standpoint and being in business and having the equipment, is there, and I know you said they're pretty comparable, but the difference between the True and the Precor, I mean.
Precor has a good reputation. We've had True since we opened the building, and we've been satisfied with the service that we've gotten out of the machines. And we've been satisfied with the service we've gotten from ProSource, who provided them.
So just, and this is just a general question. So currently we have 12 treadmills, and I see that this is to go to at least 10. Are we going to do away with 2?
We're going to drop down to 10 treadmills because we think that is the number that we need. We need to create a little more space in the room. You know how tight it is in there, and that would create more space, and we think that would be optimal for the money.
And so we're going to go from 10 to 5 ellipticals?
No, we're going to keep 5 ellipticals. We had some ellipticals worked on and rebuilt,
so you're not gonna
the
replace
best
that.
5, we think we can get 3 more years out of them, and we will keep them.
Okay.
We will keep all the TVs on all the machines, so the TVs on those 5 ellipticals could be replaced with some of the TVs that we have that
You're gonna
still
add a stair
work.
climber.
We're going to add a stair climber,
So
correct?
basically, you're only losing one piece of equipment.
We're going to lose 2 recumbent bikes and 2
Okay.
treadmills, and then we're going to add a stair climber, so you're losing 3, basically.
Mr. Johnson, I understand we're in the contract and we have an agreement with the school board to fund part of the building equipment. Perhaps are they interested in participating in paying for any of this equipment?
Based on what I have read in the joint use, that they have to repair equipment, not to replace equipment, to repair those kind of things. The group fitness room is our responsibility based on what I have read in the joint use agreement, because they do not have access to that room at all. They cannot use that room, and they do not have access to that.
Their students use it, don't they?
No,
Unless they're a member.
not unless they're a member, but they're not as a student, but as a member.
Almost
They use the weight room
never
as
see
a
a
lot.
student in there. Almost never. I don't know why, but you almost never.
I mean, by the joint use agreement, they don't have access to the room as a school.
What would be the difference if we approve this tonight versus just waiting till this is a $100,000 commitment roughly for the town, annual payments of, $35,000. We talk about it at our budget session. I mean, don't we have one of those coming up for the recreational aquatic and Parks and Rec manager?
We're going to try to have one next week, yes, sir.
I make a motion, we talk about this further at that meeting.
Travis has made a motion to delay this and pick it up at the work session.
Second.
I need a second on it, so I got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Let's see a show of hands. All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? 4-2, motion carries to delay.
Can I ask, is it too late to ask a question?
No, ask away, why not?
I was just gonna say, what do TVs on each individual piece of equipment add to the cost? And is that important?
Yeah, it's very, we think it's important. We think it makes a difference.
All right, item number 3, Police Department promotion and change in structure.
That was moved to the consent agenda.
Let's move to the consent agenda. Okay, Ken, come on back up.
Yes, sir.
Item number 4, I'm sorry. Budget advisor for reallocation of $41,000 in water and sewer.
Well, thank you many of you have made good comments, good suggestions wisely. to me and to us that we do need an asset management system to take proper care of our assets in our water distribution system and our wastewater collection system, so that we provide the proper maintenance and repair at the right time for our assets so they don't fail. We maximize the useful life of those assets, and we minimize our long-term cost for taking care of those assets. And that we also need to know exactly where those assets are, geographically speaking. Those comments, of course, are made because we do not have an asset management system. In the way of mapping, we have limited paper maps that cover much, but not all, of our water distribution and wastewater collection system. We rely a lot on word of mouth from our experienced crew members, from what they remember, from different repair jobs that we've done over the years, and the maps that we do have available. Based on your suggestions, we've been working to find the most cost-efficient approach to developing an asset management system that is geographically based. You did provide money in this budget for us to get started on that effort, $56,000 to handle the valves. And that's one part of our water distribution system. It wouldn't tackle the rest of our water distribution system, all the other assets, and it wouldn't tackle anything in our wastewater collection system. That approach was a good approach that was developed at the time the budget was considered last year. So it's a conventional approach that reflected the assets, reflected what we had available to us in the department. We did not have a technician capable of helping in that effort. We did not have the equipment it would take to do that, so we relied on consultants that would collect that information on the valves and then put that into a simple asset management system along with geographic coordinates. Since that time, we have hired an engineering technician who is capable of assisting us and reducing our consultant costs considerably. And we have discovered a simple asset management geographic information system linking those two key functions for a very reasonable cost, a system that is designed for small municipalities like ourselves, for our wastewater wastewater collection system and our water distribution systems. The proposal that I'm asking you for tonight would be a budget advisement. We would take the money that's allocated, $56,000, take a portion of that, not all of it, that's allocated just for valves, and we would be able to build the entire system, the entire water distribution, the entire wastewater collection system, get information on all those assets. We would, instead of relying on consultants, we rely on primarily in-house staff to collect this information. We would rely on much less expensive software and much less expensive staff than to maintain those records. The county has a very good approach, a very traditional approach. They have very highly paid staff, GIS staff, to manage this effort, paid on the order of about twice as much as we pay our engineering technician, for instance. So for this $41,000, this portion of the $56,000 I would like for you to allow us to spend, we would spend it as follows. $6,700 would be the initial setup and license fee for this software. There would be a $450 monthly charge. This would be the balance for the fiscal year, 4 months. $22,000 would cover transfer of all the old data that we have in our CAD system. That software dates to 2004, and our last data entries are 2009. Transfer all that information that we have to this new system that will be utilizable by our staff and be able to allow us to be responsive to your questions and maintain the assets in the way they need to be maintained in a timely fashion. It would take all the great information that our fire department has collected over the years on the pressures and flows of our hydrants and the geographic location of those hydrants and move that information in as well. And finally, take the information that we developed as part of our grant application, our recent grant application for a new water intake structure, take that information and move that in as well. And so in a relatively short order, using resources that we primarily already have in place, we can build
close to a full asset management system for less money than it would have taken to build it just for the valves, just for the water system. So my request to you tonight is to agree to this slight change in the use of this money that you approved in this budget, agree to this budget advisement, and then authorize our town manager to sign the attached agreement with the Wooten Company that would provide the services I mentioned, and also the license agreement for the software that they would provide.
Mr. Griffin, I have a question about the, I remember an email that the mayor sent out
Yes.
about this being a new program, and I understand his concerns. I also attended a workshop where they
Yes.
presented this, and it looks like a very, very unique program that's going to be very helpful for the town as far as managing water and different things. One of the concerns that I saw Mr. Lampy mention is obtaining the data that we're going to invest in obtaining. Will this be able to be, in fact, shared with the county so that it can be used if this, in the future, if vendors change or what have you?
It's an excellent question. The software that Wooten is proposing, they've developed and proposing to use for us, is software that is based on the most common geographic information software, asset management software that is out there, developed by Earth Science Research Institute. That's what the county does use. Two things. One is that we would require Wooten on a regular basis to provide all of our updated data to us in an Esri-compatible file format. So we at any time then would have up-to-date information. We would be able to take that information and we could change companies, we could change softwares, we could make an arrangement with the county, we could do anything that we wished, we would control that data. And so all the effort that we would put into this would be something that we could carry on regardless. Second of all, mention to you that since you came out to that meeting, not only do we have a number of pilot programs that use this software in the state, Princeville, Robinsonville, Windsor, and Plymouth, but it has been adopted, as I'm proposing to you, by Ahoskie, and it's under serious consideration for adoption by Selma, Princeville, Windsor, and Edgecombe County.
Have you in fact been in touch with any of the other people that are currently using it? Do they have any concerns? I know there was many things addressed in that meeting, how it benefits us as far as knowing the repairs. For example, if a technician finds a leak, they can document it, can go back, and it gets you off a paper map. But is there any concerns that you saw with the other customers that you already used the program?
No, I think that they are very interested. It did talk with Selma and Benson and Clayton. I think the only concern they expressed is that they wished, in light of their full mission of providing electric like we do, that Wooten would also provide the electric module as well. And I've shared that with Wooten. Wooten has heard that directly from those other towns, and they indicate that that's something they're very seriously considering, and that will likely be the next module they'll develop.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ken?
Well, I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we're compatible with the county. We talk about partnering with other towns for purposes of efficiency, but we've got the perfect partner right here in Johnston County who we share water lines with and sewer lines with already.
Well, our data would be in an Esri-compatible format, so we certainly, at any time in the future, we could join with the county for that effort. To really make that work, though, and that's the reason we didn't go that direction to start with, is you really need your technician to be Esri trained, to be a real GIS technician. The county has 2 of those. The cost to hire one is basically twice, a little more than twice what we pay our engineering technician. So it'd be a difficult thing for us to move in that direction, but we could. So to really implement that, we'd have to have that person on staff. We've come up with a different way to do it that's lower cost, where we can carry that out in a more efficient basis, more cost-efficient basis.
Well, I mean, that raises another question, Ken, because everybody seems to think our wholesale electric rates are going to go down tremendously in a year or 2. We're going to be able to do some more things.
Yes.
Would we be better served to wait to that point
look at getting a GIS technician?
Well, then you're looking at the cost of the, much more expensive software, the cost of a much more expensive technician. We really need the asset management system for our water and wastewater systems. That's where, they're not visible, they're underground. We don't know where things are. We don't know all that we have. Items have not been taken care of. We are in pretty good shape with our electric system. Most of our assets are above ground. We've taken good care of them. We do have a good long-range plan in terms of our electric system. And I think that in time that they will develop that module for the electric system, but that's not a pressing demand for us. I think that we are taking good care of our electric assets and do have a good plan for that.
What is the ongoing cost for your proposal? I know your allocation is for this year.
$450 a month.
That's the only ongoing cost.
That's right. We are proposing as part of this that we would buy our own handheld GPS unit that our technician would use. That would save us from paying a consultant to take those readings. There will be, with some assets that are critical assets, for instance, the invert of a sewer manhole, the bottom of a wet well of a lift station. There will be some elevations that are critical that we will group those together, and we will pay a consultant to take those detailed vertical measurements. We'll do some of that during the course of the year. All of our horizontal measurements can be made by our technician with our new handheld device that would be part of this package for $41,000. That would cover that as well. So we can basically have a whole system for less than we would have just for the valves.
And I remember there was discussion, and we've talked about the infiltration of the stormwater into the sewer system.
Yes.
And the engineer, the technician that presented this, explained how that would benefit us versus a paper map versus, can you touch on that, what you recall, of how that will help us?
That's a good point. When you have an asset management system that's geographically based, you put in all types of information about that asset, the age, the condition, the functionality, the criticality. But you can also put in data that you actually collect. It might be a photograph of that particular manhole that's deteriorated, or that particular condition of that section of sewer line that you were able to examine. It can be detailed measurements in terms of the condition of that manhole or that sewer line. And also, when you click on that on your screen for that particular manhole, you can see then a photograph of that and know that condition and say, yes, that's the one that we recommend. And there's notes there that recommend a certain procedure to take care of that manhole and put that manhole back in good shape so that you no longer have the I&I problem with that manhole and the excessive bills that causes. Yeah, it's a system that is meant to be used to repair, maintain, replace assets as they are best taken care of at the time they need to be taken care of and the way they need to be taken care of, so that you don't have surprises that are much more expensive, you don't have breaks, you don't have catastrophes.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve this request.
I'll second.
Move on.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have one more question I'd like to ask Mr. Ken. I understand that for a system like this to be effective, it's ownership by the staff. Do you plan to put policies in place that this will be the way y'all document this and use this system? It's not just something that's going to be entered and put on the shelf. Y'all plan to implement it, train your staff, and use it?
Yes, and part of this initial money that I'm requesting goes to training our engineering technician, myself, our water and sewer superintendent, and our crew chief. And this is something that our engineering technician and water and sewer superintendent will use day in and day out. We're collecting information to build the system, but we're going to be using it day in and day out to maintain the system in the most efficient way. That's the only reason we're doing it.
Thank
you. All right. Any other discussion? I got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. I think you'd be very pleased with the the capability this gives us and will allow us to do a much better
Ken,
job.
I've learned from selling a long time, once a person's purchased, you stop talking.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Item number 5, stay right there.
We can go ahead and skip to the questions on item 5.
Yes, sir. Back in October, I appreciate your help. We had an unforeseen problem with lift station number 1, and there's a typo. If you go to the second paragraph, line 3, second paragraph, line 3 of the agenda item, it says lift station number 3. I'm in error. It should be lift station number 1. Doesn't make sense otherwise. Second paragraph, line 3, should be lift station number 1. Back in October, you were good enough to approve essentially an emergency, allow us to purchase a pump that was badly needed, started to leak. The seals were starting to leak for lift station number 1. The timeliness of your action allowed us to get that done in time, and we did not have a failure and we did not have a spill. You allowed us to use money that was allocated for the grinder pump for lift station number 3. We had $25,000 allocated to that, and you allowed us to spend $10,648 for lift station number 1. Part of the rationale, too, and we explained it to you, was that unfortunately the budget work that we had done that came up with the $25,000 estimate for the grinder pump for lift station number 3 was not accurate. It was off by at least half. It would have cost $50,000 to do that. So we didn't know how to proceed with lift station number 3 anyway, even if we hadn't had that emergency develop. Since that time, we've continued to try to solve that problem. I told you we would try to find a way to get that done this year and come back to you. We have found a solution. And the solution is one in which if you utilize the existing rail system that holds that grinder pump in place, that's substantial, that's expensive, it's difficult to purchase. Use the existing electrical control panels that are in place. Those are expensive as well. And focus on a grinder pump that would fit perfectly within the rail system that we have. That would be ideal. We have found a vendor who will fabricate from scratch a grinder pump that would do exactly that. Fit into our existing rack system and utilize our existing electrical control panel. And so we were able to bring that cost down from the $50,000 estimate down substantially to $29,688. And so what this budget advisement requests then is to take the money that was left that we didn't have to use. We didn't have to use all the lift station number 3 grinder money. Take that money that's left, along with a couple other capital purchases that we have already made, where we did have a little bit of savings, and we can group those together and do have the money that would pay for this full reduced price of a grinder pump. So this budget advisement asks for permission to proceed then with that grinder pump number 3 that is listed in the budget.
Looking for a motion.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The price will be covered using, you listed 4 items.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that those 4 items are leftover monies from having accomplished the purpose of the allocated money.
Exactly.
I move we approve the request.
Second.
Got a motion second. Any other more discussion?
Just one question, since it's in here. Has nothing to do with this, but what's the status of the Vector truck?
It is here in the state. It is having the final equipment put on at the dealership in the state, and we expect it any day. And we're going to put it to use immediately at the water plant, taking care of some of our terrible sand problem.
All right. Got a motion and a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Greg Seiler. Discussion regarding compensation for volunteer fire department personnel.
Good evening, Councilman. I'll keep this as short as possible unless you have questions. This agenda item is a result of discussion held at our last workshop meeting. I have summarized the discussion for those that were not in attendance. The request was made to bring back two options to remedy the stipend grossing up situation. Two options are before you with the recommendation for option one. Are there any questions?
I move we approve option one.
A second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Greg, I have a question for you about this, and I don't think we still got an answer. I still remain questioning why this change was made anyways, and what is our plan moving forward?
We haven't decided what our plan will be going forward. If we are to use the tools before us and to gross up appropriately, it will be done the same next year it was done this year, the first time around. So I'm leaving it up to the board to ultimately decide what we're going to do going forward.
It seems like, and we'll talk about it as we go through the budget session, it seems like really maybe the quick answer is, if there is going to be, if you go back to prior years, where there's more taxes paid, what the difference would be is that there would be, you could still do something close to that, but that additional amount would also have to be taxed. So there'd be a little bit of a net tax liability of the employee or payment. So it wouldn't be quite the same math, but that would appear to be the proper way to do it. So we can probably, what we'll probably do is give examples of the different pay amounts and show what the new amount would bear out.
When will you do that, Paul, during the work session?
Yeah, I think so.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
At this time, we open up for the council members' comments, and if any council member wants to make a comment, they can say what's on their mind.
I guess my comment would be, I don't know that I necessarily feel good about the public hearing tonight, but I do feel good about the fact that we're trying to get all the information that we need to make a proper decision. When we talked about the work session, or creating the work sessions, that's the type of thing, I don't know if it can be done, that would have been very helpful if we had talked about it 2 weeks ago in a work session to really come up to speed. I do not want to commit a disservice to any citizen or anybody in our ETJ by not being informed. And there's just a limited amount of self-informing we can do in a week's time. If it's possible, and it may not be possible with the timing of planning board meetings and everything, it may not even be appropriate, I don't know, but if we can address some of those things in the work sessions prior to them being on the agenda, that would be helpful. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Bob Spence, is that legal? Wouldn't you have to advertise and go through the whole route?
If it's an issue of a conditional use where you've got findings of fact, you've got problems because of evidence, I think. If it's zoning, it would be a really good idea. There's not findings of fact. As you would know, Emery, the main problem is once you get to be a judge, hearing a lot of evidence outside the courtroom is a problem. That's the problem. If you're making a legislative decision where you're deciding what the pattern of zoning should be in the town, apart from special facts, it seems like to me, the more knowledge you have, the better.
Yeah, and I see that, and I'm not so much, it probably just can't be done, but just getting up to speed on the issues to be addressed by the evidence, yeah, it probably just can't be done, I understand. Unless we continue every public hearing.
Yeah.
Invite everybody to work issue. I can see how some other communities are doing that. If the larger ones have that. I would think, frankly, they might, just the sheer volume. Off the cuff, I'm concerned about the issue of evidence.
And we could have made a decision tonight.
Right.
We could have made the right decision tonight. Probably would have, but I don't know that I'd have felt good about the process.
Mayor, I'd like to make a statement to the staff on behalf of the bad weather we recently had and how things went. You know, they did a very good job from my perspective, taking care of that and worked around the clock in some situations, and the other storm wasn't as bad. That one caught us off guard, so I'd like to say thank you to the staff for that. One other observation that I'd like to bring before you, Mayor, is just in past experiences out on the streets and highways and seeing motor vehicles being crashed, there's a lot of debris that's left from the wreckage, and it's the wrecker's driver to clean that up. And I've noticed on many cases, they don't even have a shovel or a broom to clean it up. Not all of them, but some of them out of town, some of them in town. But anyways, I understand there's a rotation for the wrecker service. I would just like to ask the police chief to please have his staff communicate with these wrecker drivers, because they ultimately have the approval to say the scene is clear. We've got called out, the town staff, several times to repeat because stuff wasn't cleaned up. And it makes our streets trashy. So I'd just like to ask that the chief.
Can you get that enforced?
And the last question I have, I'd like to present before the council and the manager, is could we have an update on the grant for the water intake that we recently applied for?
The water intake grant?
Yeah.
That was denied back in December?
Well, I don't think I was formally notified of that, and I don't know if the other council was, but I mean, were we going to have a further discussion about how we're going to address the situation?
No, I formally notified everybody that it was denied in December. If you missed it, I'm sorry. But
how did you do that?
By my report and by email. I think I did it several times, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, what's our next course of action as far as that?
We've tasked our engineer to, or actually we've tasked staff to find a more of a quick fix kind of remedy that would not be as costly. And also, we're looking at viable options, and we've spoken to some firms already about how they might go about it differently than the bigger fix that was presented with that grant application. More of a, I don't know what you want to call it, more of a practical fix that obviously wouldn't be as expensive, and that is part of our budget considerations for this year, to have that as a much more cost-effective fix. Of course, the issue is going to be, some will say it'll just be a very short fix. Some will say it'll work for 6 to 10 years, and we're going to find out, what we can do for more cost-effective, just a lot more direct, which may involve, dredging or just cleaning out and changing at the actual intake system. And we've gotten some good information so far, so we're hoping to get a good solution that we can afford to do, hopefully in 1 year.
Thank you.
So Paul, any update on the Riverwalk?
Yeah, he's got one.
At the request of Councilman Harris, we pursued working with a contractor to get a proposal, and we ran into a situation with the engineer that the contractor was using. As of last week, consulting with the town manager, we decided to back into going to our original proposal from Kimberly Horn Engineering, which was the $5,000 proposal that you presented. He is in the process of getting us a contract for the manager's signature, and we'll be moving forward with that soon. So that's where we are right now.
And this may be more appropriate for the Parks and Rec Director, but I know at one of our Parks and Rec Advisory Board meetings, we discussed the possibility of there being funds available for actual repairs. Do we have any more information on that? I think at first we didn't think there was any money, but then there was a report. 16, that's right, you're right. Yep. That's right, you did say that.
In addition to that, I've made some inquiry into the Soil Conservation Service, and they do have some emergency funds, which once we get a permitting situation and know what the solution is going to be, we'll apply through them. Probably be limited to about $2,000, but any assistance would be grateful.
Any other council members' comments? Not? city manager to present his reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. One, something that the mayor and I have spoken about and met on many occasions was, if you recall, there was I think it was a $7,000 line item for carpet at the finance department for this budget year. And the mayor and I have spoken on many occasions about kind of more of a much more intensive renovation in the finance department. Some materials you've got in your packet, or part of my report, there should be a separate sheet there that you've got as a attachment. It's got kind of a diagram with some renovations, really to the interior space. You know, there's some movable walls in that department, some of which we can do ourselves, and some of which we'll need some outside help with. A lot of it is purchasing new walls and new shelving and new storage cabinets and other things. Some of the other improvements, which that picture does reflect, would be closing in the 2 outside windows, which was the mayor's suggestion, for the utility payments, because they're just not used, basically. We don't use them at all for accepting monies at this point. So his suggestion was to close them in, which we can do that, basically sheetrock and close them in, which would give the other side a little bit more of a usable space. One area on the end, if you're facing from the hallway, would be the far left end, we could use for the copier and other a fax machine, scanners, that kind of thing, to go in that corner, kind of a workspace. The other end would be more of a storage workspace that could be used by the staff. Like I said, replace the walls, give us a little bit more space. Basically, Greg is going to move into the corner office where, if you remember, Connie used to be until she moved down to the utility admin building where she's been for several months now. So Greg will take over. He hasn't moved there yet. Take over that corner space, which has got the glass door. He'll be in there, and basically will turn one of the 4 spaces where they work now, where they've got Melissa, Jay, Greg, and Brian in those 4 spaces. We'll turn one of the ones back there, again, if you're facing that space, to probably the far left corner, and to basically put all of our storage cabinets there. There's a lot of documents they have to keep on site. It takes up a lot of space, and right now, if you've been back there, if you haven't, we'll be happy to take you back there. There's a lot of storage of papers and boxes and stuff in that middle walkway area. It's just not and it's not very efficient and not well organized. We can get most, if not all, of that in that back corner. Anyway, so it'd be a good improvement. The carpet will touch up the walls as needed and with the new space. We got some different numbers, most of which I think we can do with existing budget funds. You'll see the total number is about $50,000 to redo that space, including the new dividers, new file cabinets, all of the new kind of furniture and fixtures that will be included there as part of that estimate, and it is detailed there in your packet, plus an additional approximately $9,000 for the carpet and the closing in of those 2 window units that I just discussed. So and I think we can lower that number a bit, but I wanted to give you an introduction, a heads up to what we're thinking about. And again, the mayor can weigh in any time on this, but I think it's something that we need to do. It's just that space has not been really addressed in many, many years now. And it's just time to take care of it and improve it. So that's something we can talk about over the next week or 2 with our work sessions, and we'll keep you posted. But again, we can do this, again, with existing budget funds, moving a little bit of money from what we know will not be spent this year on the AMI project, not much, but about $20,000 from the water, sewer, and or electric, which is responsible for that space also, along with presently funded renovation and other improvement space from the general fund. So it'd be a combined effort, most of which was budgeted funds already. The only new funds, you might say, would be that extra approximately $20,000, and that would come from the utility fund and their capital outlay line items, from water, sewer, and from electric. It won't come from the water plant. We've got enough concern there with things we have to do with the water plant that we won't use those monies. And again, that capital money was set aside for the AMI project. We're using some of that for our pilot program. The rest of it will not be used this year. So again, we could get that, and I'd love to get it done this budget year if at all possible. So again, please take a look at that, and we can talk about it over the next couple of weeks at our work sessions, if you have any questions or comments about that. Another utility update. Today, Ken and I met with Electricities. If you recall, we've been talking about trying to get a better price for our cost of service study and a rate analysis for our electric rates. We got back, we met with their staff today and got the new number for that amount. If you recall, the bids from last, I think it was last September, October, were, the low bid was about $30,000. The second bid was about $37,000 to do those two things. But basically a cost of service study. And that studies how much it costs to provide electricity and services to your different class of customers. The rate analysis, it just tells you how much you have to bill and what your classes are to recoup the money you need to stay in operations and to meet your expenses and to be able to break even as a department. So it's two different studies, and one, the cost of service is very important because you really can't do a rate analysis until you've done that cost of service. You don't know how much it costs to provide service to a certain type of customer unless you know how much it costs, and you can't determine their rate until you have that data. That has not been done in Smithfield for many, many years. So it's overdue. We need to do it. We're not alone in that. That's the case for many, many electricities that need to update these numbers. The idea of doing this now, one, it just needs to be done. But the idea, of course, was to beat the what we hope will be the asset purchase closing during this summer, which we hope will produce a lower wholesale rate for us. So that's the timing of it. The new rate that Electricities has provided, and again, it's in your materials attached to your monthly report. The new net number would be $20,700, and basically, it's really about $25,700, but they give us an annual credit of about $5,000 for certain operational assistance, which we would apply to this, which would be an appropriate application. So that would bring it down to a pretty good deal in terms of these studies. These would be a little bit more of what I call a base study, maybe not quite as much detail as the other ones would be, but we had a good conversation. We had actually several conversations. We think it will give us everything we need to have our rates ready to adjust as soon as possible. This is probably a 4 to 6 month process between these two types of studies, or the study and the analysis. So again, if the asset purchase does occur sometime in July, we start in the next 30 days with these studies, we'll be able to make an adjustment sometime in late summer, early fall, which means we can get past that savings, hopefully onto our customers as soon as possible. So again, I guess I'm really just looking for feedback from the council if there's other information that you may want me to provide. Not necessarily looking for a decision tonight because it wasn't on the agenda, and again, I wouldn't have put it on there because we just met today with Electricities. But again, it's something we could take up during our next couple of weeks in the workshops. But as I mentioned before, the earlier we start this, the sooner they can get to work on collecting the data and doing the analysis for both the cost of service study and eventually the rate analysis. So the sooner we start, the sooner we can have the results and we can make the adjustments.
Paul, there was some mention about internet partnership with other towns. Is that something that's feasible, or you decided it's not feasible?
No, we actually looked into it, and as suspected, I was a little leery of that idea. The problem is everybody has different rates and different debt and different programs. So when we talked to him today, we put the question, just as you said, point blank, hey, if we got together with the other towns in Johnson County, would it save us any money? He's like, no. Absolutely not. He said, unfortunately, it's an individual analysis, and what we do in Clayton will not be the same thing we do in Smithfield at all. So it's a different analysis entirely, really. They're looking at our customer base, our class of customers, and again, how we provide the power. The only common denominators will probably be the wholesale cost of electricity, and after that, virtually everything is different. So it seems like it could help a little bit, but they're looking more internal at us, not to a market comparison about what Clayton or Selma charges for electricity. That could be a small part of the rate analysis, but not the cost of service study at all. So that may be a little helpful there, but in the true essence of this, most of the time it's spent in that cost of service study, so it just won't help to partner up and do that together, unfortunately. But we did ask that, we looked at it, and it was a good question, but that won't actually help the process. I do feel that I would still like to be at the front of that line of towns asking for a rate study and a cost of service, because the representative didn't say the line was getting long at the bus stop just yet, but he said a lot of people walking in that direction right now, and so far we're ahead of the pack. So we are ahead of that curve right now, and I'd definitely like to stay there. So I feel like there's going to be a rush to that. Everybody's going to ask that question probably in 2 or 3 months, and if we can beat that move or that question and that analysis, I think we'll get our data in and processed and out that much quicker.
put that on the agenda for our next work session. Yes, sir.
Mayor, just a couple just really quick follow-up things. One, as you know, the Public Works Director mentioned at the work session a week or so ago that he will have the bids early next week for the regular annual repaving numbers, and so we're going to try to, again, place that again on a work session that comes up after he gets those. I think it was at the 9th, 11th, he'll have those in. So again, the sooner we can get that approved, and typically we go with the low bidder. There's not, as long as they meet the requirements, there's not a lot of difficult decision-making there. The sooner he can get them out there and get them moving. In addition to the basic annual repaving program, he has asked for a repaving estimate for both our parking lot here at Town Hall and also the library. The library, typically, there's a joint effort, some percentage of between the county and the town, and we've already requested the county to assist us in resurfacing that lot at the library, because it does need it. So we're going to get that number and then go back to the county and see what they'd be willing to do, hopefully in this upcoming budget year, to help us resurface that parking lot to make it a little bit more attractive. And Mayor, as already mentioned, I want to thank the staff, basically in Public Works, but also in Parks and Rec, and also the utility crews who also helped out during the storm, because it was the streets, the sidewalks, and again, I think they jumped out early and did a good job, but also the different staffs helped, whether it's at the Shrek entrance, where they've got to shovel ice for hours and hours to make it accessible during those times, or whether it's at the utility building or even at Town Hall here, trying to make it safe on the walkways and the sidewalks downtown, and those crews helped out, even if it was outside their typical work time, and we appreciate their efforts there. Mayor, that's all I have, unless there are some questions.
Any questions for the city manager? All right. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.